at Hallwalls Contemporary Arts Center, sitting with Peter D'Auria. I don't know if I said it right now after we just discussed it, and Andrea Mancuso, who work together as a collaborative artistic team under the rubric Virocode. And we're sitting here in Evolving Moisture, which is their installation for Beyond in Western New York 2010. And I don't want to have to recount your entire artistic history, but I think we should go back a little bit because you guys have been working together for more than 20 years now. And let's just start by, where did the name Virocode come from? Because it's a great name. Well, it actually is like a great, brand to work under.
Back in the 80s, I think we were a little bit more sci-fi, and then a little more sci-fi than science, which I think we more are now. But and then we also didn't want a name that really you orient with one person or one person's personality, because we're working together. Or sometimes we'd work with other people or do projects with other people at least, and just the idea of anonymity. And back then, we were also interested more in information technology, I think, and ideas that were biological and information technology kind of fit that name. And
we had this idea that it would be more of a collective.
Involving people other than yourselves?
Yeah, and we have certainly collaborated with other artists. It's a commitment, so usually the artists we've collaborated with, we've collaborated with them more than once, but at a point it is always it's us and them. So it never really sort of evolved to being a larger group, but it still has the intent still was for it to be a collective, even though it's a collective of two.
So what was the year that you started using that name?
This show, it's SEPA.
Maybe 86 or 7.
See,
87, I think.
It's interesting to me as I think about it, because that time, the late 80s in through the 90s, ideas around the body, ideas around infection, ideas around the self as a corporeal entity were very prominent in art and in intellectual practice. They still are, but they really kind of blossomed at that time. And I think it's so, to me, it always seemed like an appropriate name to come out of that era, but also it's a wonderful name because it's only more appropriate today. Because I don't know if in '87 we were talking about the genetic code as much as we might today.
Right.
And certainly the idea of viruses, infections, that sort of thematic is ever present, hasn't gone anywhere.
I think it did come from that idea of being sort of fascinated and intimidated in a way by this connectivity that we were experiencing as a culture, to each other's immune systems and disease pools that we shared, and virus and code, sort of combining those two words to make Virocode seem to make sense.
I mean, there was lots of writing about that kind of stuff in the scientific community, and not so mainstream. It seems like everything now is mainstream because everything's on the web, and if you don't know, you don't search. That's all.
Right.
So everything's mainstream, I guess, now. But back then, maybe we're not so mainstream about notion. But there's books like Richard Dawkins' Selfish Gene, and there are paradigms in genetics where a gene can have a presence in our code that we really is almost a separate evolutionary process. Our mitochondria and our DNA is completely symbiotic, it seems, with other parts of our cells, and now it's incorporated. There's other codes in our genes that are selfishly protected and in fact direct its organism's evolution in a sometimes counterproductive way. So there's scientific literature galore about it. So.
I was always worried that the name would, not worried, I mean, I guess just, first of all, we registered it for a website. I thought that was important to do because it is sort of an invented name. And then I was always, curious at some point if there would be some pharmaceutical or something that would come up with that name, or
buy it for a lot of money. I think.
or it was, yeah, and then they could buy the website, or it would just all of a
Domain
sudden
name.
get morphed into this other thing, which I don't think
There's still
has
hope for
happened
that.
yet, but it could,
Just keep making more domain names. Dot this or that. So.
Because every time they make a drug, they need a mainstream name for it, right?
Yes.
It's not. But I'm interested in a remark you said a second ago. You said you guys started off as more sci-fi than science.
Well, I mean, I started in engineering undergrad and was a bit disillusioned with that environment. So really wanted to maintain our interest in science and use it in the art world. And there's a lot of cool science fiction coming out around that time, cyberpunk stuff and things like that, and certainly even some Virocode and kind of things that were pseudo sci-fi.
right, all
Jamie
this
Ballard and that.
Neuromancer, Gibson, I mean, all this sort of cyberpunk literature, and just that ability to imagine some of the ideas that were burgeoning, they were in the culture.
It's actually weird that those things you're referring to now are like historical things, like
Yeah.
cyberpunk. Like, it's
You can say it,
It's a
right?
thing of the past. I mean, it still exists, but it's it's something that we've already sped past in so many ways.
Or I think we have.
Or I think we have. Let's talk about the present installation, Evolving Moisture, and what originated that. I mean, in our studio visits for Beyond In, I mean, it was kind of, I have a lot of like episodic moments in studio visits, and one among many was your sheer glee at having concocted this little audio mechanism to capture with the high-speed camera a very specific moment. Now, I'm not saying that's the beginning of the project. You can go backwards, but that was my first entry into it and seeing these new works. And so, tell us where this series began. Because we have a video, we have photographs, we have an installation that you're sitting in front of, and just wondering where it all originated, or did it derive from a previous series?
Well, as far as the work itself, I think it really did begin with that device. And, there's a certain sense of empowerment when you can build something from scratch and get it to do what you want it to do. I mean,
I guess maybe we should be more specific. It was an old cassette recorder.
I love the fact that this design that I had heard about used this old technology, and I had
circa
this
1970 something.
I had an old cassette recorder, and I guess it is a bit nostalgic because I remember having a cassette recorder. In some of our early works, we did 4-track recordings, so I am attached to cassette. Mm-hmm. So I'm attached to old technology. So the idea that I could take this, pleather, had this beautiful pleather case to it, velvet lined, old recorder that I found, and find a use for it was exciting. So it's a cassette recorder, and then it's a wires that connect to a silicone response chip. It's like a little chip. And it's wired in such a way that the chip acts as a gate, and it's connected to, the chip is actually connected to a photographic strobe. Okay? So that's one system, and then the other system that comes from the recorder is a microphone, and the microphone just connects right into the mic jack that's on the recorder. And the recorder has this like a little meter for like an audio level indicator that when it goes into the red zone, it clips, and it sends off at that point a slight charge out the other wire, which is connected to the output. And so the way this little system works is when there's a really, big sound that clips the audio meter, it sends a charge that takes the SRC and opens the gate and pops the flash. So the way that system worked is really kind of beautifully simple in a way, because the microphone is close to the sound, or in this case, the balloon popping, then you would get the flash sooner, right? The microphone's further away, the amount of time it would take for that sound wave to travel to the microphone, you get the flash later. So you could control, to some extent, how much balloon was left on the water shape.
How long did it find you to figure out, how long did it take you to figure out the optimum range that you wanted to?
It changed.
Did
It changed, kind of day to day. It seemed like it wasn't real well calibrated, but
But
trial and error.
it took some trial and error. It was very exciting, and we had the wires and this sort of in the house for a long time, and went through a couple of chips because we hadn't wired it properly. So when we finally got it to work, it was really satisfying. And then bringing it into the studio and using it with the camera was again like a whole other process of discovery, and then trying to figure out what distance to use.
Now, had you ever
Great.
used a high-speed camera before?
Video camera or the
Well, I guess the still wasn't a high speed. It was just connected.
We've played with shutter speed a lot and have done long exposures and have done light painting. Peter did a whole project on light painting early, even before we started working together. So I guess we're always interested in photography from that point of view of what things the things you can do with the camera.
time scale.
Yeah, time
long
scale.
versus short,
Just things, its ability to help you perceive or help you identify what you're perceiving, but you might not have noticed.
So what element from this, if there was one, surprised you as you were working on it? As you shoot these images and develop them and go, wow, we didn't anticipate that. Was there any of that? Or did it end up looking like you anticipated it to look?
No, it looked really good. I thought it looked good.
I guess I was surprised that it was just so beautiful. I guess I didn't necessarily do it to make these images that I thought were really sort of pretty or pleasing or just,
profound. Or
yeah.
anything.
So.
Right, because you're in your previous photographic work. I mean, there are things that I found beautiful, but it doesn't seem like beauty is necessarily something that has really been in the work that much.
Right.
So,
yeah.
So that you would say that was something that surprised you with this, that
Yeah, they're spectacular too, and they drew in a lot of other kinds of associations, of explosions, and I guess I like that. And we did the series right before this that was called Vectors, and they were many of them were like these little toy missiles, but they were covered with latex and they looked like skin. And we had envelopes that were covered with skin that we had done right around sort of the anthrax male scare, and just these notions. So I guess that work, I'm very interested in that work, but it was. I guess this work in some way dealt with some of the same issues that I felt like we hadn't completely resolved, but in a completely different way, just in terms of the aesthetics of that exploding shape.
and I've sort of wondered over the last 2.5 months if we did a slight disservice by only having one photograph here with the rest at SEPA, because and maybe disservice is the wrong word, but what I'm getting at is when I go to see all the photographs at SEPA, when you see them together, you really do start to get a sense of these, a line of bodies. You do get this sort of figurative sense that comes through, which is maybe less apparent when you just see like the one that we have here.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know. Certainly they have more personality together, sort of. But this, the way this kind of worked with the projection, and then this like hard water
And the reflected
light
water,
shower.
and this piece actually has a bit more balloon in it than most of them, and it sort of almost evokes what the process is in a way through looking, I don't know, but that's one of the reasons that it was picked.
That is something I really liked about our installation here, is that all of these elements are, circling around and reiterating that sense of changing, of perpetually changing states, that you can't, you're not fixated on one version or one form, and, suggest something else about material. And you know, as we talked about before, I mean, it's sort of there is this, you call it evolving moisture. So to use the word evolving really comes back to what you were saying earlier about hinting at, you know, the idea that we are evolving as.
And we're a lot of moisture, and plus, and this thing keeps evaporating.
And it keeps evaporating and leaving a calcified corpse
Interesting
behind.
problems. I think that this having them separate pushed us to develop more of an installation for this space and to do these two pieces. I don't think these two pieces would have happened necessarily if we weren't sort of given the space and wanted to sort of make sure we were representing the whole idea. Because the video is just wonderfully playful and engaging. I mean, it draws a lot of people in, and so having just a little bit more here for them to ponder on sort of why, you know, what else is in this.
Well, I can tell you that it really worked because in particular with the video and with the, I don't even know what material is this?
Internal dust.
It's like a,
Oh, this is a polyester resin.
this, you know, poured sculpture and the video, I mean, people were absolutely entranced by those things. I can't tell you how many people came up to me and told me I had a leak in the gallery because
Really?
there was like a little bit, you know, on the other side of this
from the
wall.
water.
Yeah.
But you know, it was pretty interesting to me because they're very direct. Very direct, you know, but they really did hold people's attention and really they were really magnetically drawn to them.